Today we're reading from John chapter 5 and verse 33, where Jesus said, "You have sent to John, and he has testified to the truth." So in this moment, people have been essentially testing Jesus and the validity of his words. And so he points to someone else who they say is a prophet, John the Baptist. I guess the question we need to ask is, what is John saying about Jesus? And hopefully this will start to answer some of the questions for people who struggle with doubt. So in John chapter 3, essentially what happens is a religious leader, a Pharisee, a rabbi, goes to John the Baptist and starts asking him questions. He tells John that there's another guy in the local area who's also baptizing people with water. And lots of folks are going to this new guy. So what's John's response? I guess if John was an ungodly man and not interested in Jesus or interested in God, then he might start feeling a bit insecure and start being all uppity and saying, well, I think he's a dodgy geezer, don't go down and see him. But instead he says, "You yourselves are my witnesses that I said, I am not the Christ, but I have been sent ahead of him. He who has the bridegroom is the bridegroom, but the friend of the bridegroom who stands and hears him rejoices greatly because of the bridegroom's voice. So this joy of mine has been made full. He must increase and I must decrease. He who comes from above is above all. He who is of the earth is from the earth and speaks of the earth. He who comes from heaven is above all. What he has seen and heard, and of that he testifies, and no one receives his testimony. He who has received his testimony has set his seal to this, that God is true. For he whom God has sent speaks to the words of God, for he gives the Spirit without measure. The Father loves the Son and has given all things into his hand. He who believes in the Son has eternal life, but he who does not obey the Son will not see life, but the wrath of God abides in him. John says some really interesting things about Jesus right here. I love that John says that Jesus has come from above. He makes the point of saying that because Jesus is from above, he can tell us spiritual things, whereas because the religious leaders are from earth, they can only tell us earthly things. They have earthly behaviors and earthly desires, whereas Jesus has godly behaviors and godly desires because he is from above. John also says that if you do not believe in Jesus, then you will not receive life. Essentially, if you're not for Jesus, then you are full of wrath and death. Considering he's saying this to a religious leader of the day, this is pretty strong stuff. And Jesus affirms John, like all of the other folks nearby, because people recognize that he is from God and speaking on behalf of God. Jesus says John's testimony is true, and in doing so he says, I have come from above. I am not born of the earth, so to speak, and so my desires and my nature is godly. I can tell you things that are from above. I can tell you what heaven is like. I can tell you the way to heaven. But these religious leaders cannot. Today, if anyone else comes speaking against Jesus, let me say this: they're not from God. If you want to know the way to heaven and what heaven is like, let me recommend Jesus to you, like John the Baptist would. I hope you have a blessed week.